Tonight, as you lie there, you believe you are touching something. The blanket over you, the pillow beneath your head, the bed holding the whole weight of your body. It feels solid. It feels certain. It feels like the most obvious truth in the world. But you are not touching any of it. You never have. In your entire life, through every embrace, every handshake, every grain of sand you ever ran through your fingers, you have never once truly touched anything at all. Nothing has ever made contact with anything else, anywhere, in the way you imagine it. This is not a riddle, and it is not a trick of words. It is one of the strangest and most beautiful truths that physics has ever uncovered about the world. The solidity you feel right now, the firmness of the bed, the pressure of the blanket, is real as a sensation, but the touching itself is an illusion. What you feel as contact is something far stranger and far more wonderful, happening in the space between things that never quite meet. So here's the question I want us to carry together through the quiet hours ahead. If you have never truly touched anything, not the people you love, not the ground beneath your feet, not even your own folded hands, then what is this thing we call touch? And what does it mean that the closest you have ever come to anything is a gap you can never cross? Welcome. This is Cosmic Nocturne. Get comfortable. Close your eyes if you'd like. You don't need to watch tonight. Only listen. Together we're going to journey down, past the skin, past the cells, past the atoms, into the almost unimaginable emptiness that makes up everything you have ever called solid. And we'll find, at the bottom of it all, something that turns the loneliness of never touching into something closer to a quiet kind of grace. So settle in. There's no hurry tonight. The truth has been waiting inside every atom of you since before you were born. It can wait a little longer. Let your breathing slow as we begin. There is nothing here you need to understand perfectly, nothing you need to hold on to, nothing you must remember in the morning. This is not a lesson to be studied. It is a journey to be drifted through, a slow descent, together, into the hidden nature of the ordinary world, told gently enough to carry you towards sleep. If your eyes are still open, you can let them close now. The words will keep coming, soft and unhurried, leading you down through the smallness of things and back out into a wider and stranger and more beautiful understanding of what you are and what the world is and how the two of you are joined. You don't have to follow every step. You only have to rest and let the quiet truth of it wash over you, like a tide that has been coming in since the beginning of the universe and will still be coming in long after tonight. Let's begin with the world as it feels. Right now, everything around you seems perfectly, reassuringly solid. The wall would stop your hand if you pushed against it. The floor holds you up. A stone, closed in your fist, feels dense and whole and continuous, as though it were solid all the way through, the same substance packed tight from one side to the other. For almost all of human history, this is exactly what people believed, that solid things were solid through and through, that if you could cut a stone in half and then in half again and keep going, you would simply get smaller and smaller pieces of the same continuous stuff forever. The world seemed full, packed, complete. But it is not even close. The truth, which took us thousands of years and some of the most careful thinking in our history to uncover, is that everything you think of as solid is, overwhelmingly, empty space. Not a little empty, almost entirely empty. The solidity is the illusion. The emptiness is the reality. To understand this, we have to go down past the scale of anything your eyes can see, into the hidden architecture of matter itself. Everything around you, the blanket, the stone, your own hand, is made of tiny building blocks called atoms. Atoms are so small that the numbers stop meaning anything. In a single grain of sand, there are more atoms than there are grains of sand on a long stretch of beach. In the palm of your hand, there are more atoms than there are stars in the observable universe. They are unimaginably, almost violently small. And yet, and here is the first astonishing thing, each one of those tiny atoms is itself, on the inside, almost entirely empty. An atom is not a solid little ball. It is a vast, echoing emptiness with a tiny speck at the center and a faint blur of something even smaller whispering around it. If you could somehow stand inside an atom, you would find yourself in a void so empty it would make the space between the planets seem crowded. So the solidity you feel is built from things that are themselves not solid. The stone in your hand is made of atoms, and the atoms are made mostly of nothing. Stack up enough emptiness in the right arrangement, and somehow it pushes back against your hand and calls itself a stone. It is worth pausing to feel how strange this is, because our whole intuition rebels against it. Everything in your daily experience insists that solid means full. When you knock on a table, the sound is sharp and certain. When you stub your toe on a door frame, the pain is immediate and undeniable. When you lift something heavy, your muscles strain against its weight. Nothing in any of that feels like emptiness. Nothing feels like void. The world presents itself to us every waking moment as dense and packed and complete. And it does so with such consistency, such reliability, that to suggest otherwise sounds almost absurd. And yet the people who looked closest, who spent their lives asking patient, careful questions of the smallest pieces of matter, found, again and again, the same astonishing answer. The fullness is a kind of performance. The density is a kind of theater, staged so flawlessly that no one in the audience ever guessed. Behind the curtain, where the real work of the world is done, there is almost nothing there at all. Just tiny specks, impossibly far apart, and the invisible forces stretched between them. I want you to hold both of these truths gently at once tonight, because we will keep returning to them. The world feels solid. The world is mostly empty. Neither cancels the other. The feeling is honest. Your senses are not lying to you. And the emptiness is real. The physics is not playing a trick. Somehow, both are true. And learning how they can both be true is the whole gentle journey of the hours ahead. How nothing becomes something you can hold is the heart of the story tonight. Before we go down into the smallness, let me say something reassuring so you can relax into all of this rather than brace against it. Nothing I am going to tell you tonight will take away a single real thing from your world. When we are done, the bed will still hold you. Your hands will still be your hands. The people you love will still be exactly as close and exactly as warm as they have always been. We are not going to dismantle the world. We are only going to look beneath its surface, gently, slowly, with wonder rather than alarm, and discover that the comfortable, solid, reliable world you have always known is built all the way down out of something far stranger and far more beautiful than anyone ever imagined. The solidity stays. Only your sense of what it truly is will deepen. So there is nothing to fear in any of this. There is only a quiet marvel waiting at the bottom of ordinary things, and we have the whole night to drift down toward it together. And to tell it, we have to look closely at just how empty a single atom really is. Part 2. The cathedral inside the atom. Let me try to give you a feeling for the emptiness inside a single atom, because the numbers alone are too large and too small to hold in the mind. Pictures are the only way in. An atom has a center, called the nucleus. This is where nearly all of its substance lives, almost all of the mass, all of the weight, packed into the very middle. Around that center, at a great distance, drifts a faint haze of electrons, almost weightless, almost nothing, the lightest whisper of matter there is. And between the center and that distant haze, there is nothing at all. Pure void, empty space. Now here is the part that breaks the imagination. The gap between the center of the atom and its outer edge is not small. Compared to the size of the nucleus itself, it is staggeringly, almost absurdly vast. If you took the nucleus of an atom and made it the size of a small marble, and set that marble in the very center of a great cathedral, then the electrons, the outer edge of the atom, the part that meets the world, would be drifting somewhere out by the farthest walls, by the highest windows, a faint mist circling the empty air of the dome. And in between the marble and the walls, throughout the entire enormous volume of the cathedral, there would be nothing. No substance, no stuff, just empty space, and the marble at the center, and the faint mist far away at the edges. That is a single atom, a cathedral of emptiness with a marble at its heart. And everything you have ever touched is built from these. Your hand is a vast congregation of cathedrals. The bed beneath you, the air around you, the book or the screen, the distant mountains, the stars themselves, all of them the same. Almost entirely empty space, held in shape by something we have not yet named.
If you could somehow remove all the empty space from inside the atoms of a human body, if you could collapse every cathedral down to just its marble, packing all the nuclei together with no gaps, the entire human body would shrink to something far smaller than a grain of dust, almost too small to see. And if you did the same for all of humanity, every person alive, all 8 billion of us, the total substance, with the emptiness squeezed out, would fit into a volume smaller than a sugar cube. Everything else that makes us up, all the apparent solidity, all the bulk and the weight and the presence of a living human being is, in the end, mostly empty space. So when you press your hand against the bed tonight and feel it stop, you are not feeling one solid thing meet another. You are feeling two clouds of almost nothing approach each other in the dark. Let me try one more image, because the emptiness inside the atom is so extreme that it deserves a second attempt to feel it. Forget the cathedral for a moment and imagine instead that you could take a single atom and blow it up, larger and larger, until its outer edge, that faint haze of electrons, was the size of an entire sports stadium, the great bowl of seats rising all around you into the night. You walk out to the very center of the field, to where the nucleus waits, the part that holds nearly all the substance of the whole atom. And there, at the center of that vast stadium, you find a single grain of rice, perhaps a grain of salt, something almost too small to see, resting alone on the grass, with the enormous emptiness of the entire stadium stretching up and away from it in every direction. That is the ratio. That is how much of an atom is nothing. A grain of rice in a stadium, and emptiness everywhere else. And now remember that everything is made of these. The mattress beneath you, the walls of the room, the glass in the window, your own resting body. Every bit of it is built from these stadiums of emptiness, stacked together by the trillions upon trillions, each one almost entirely hollow, each one holding its tiny grain of substance at its silent center. The most solid object you can imagine is, at the scale where the truth lives, more spacious than the night sky. There is a strange comfort in this, if you let it settle, rather than letting it frighten you. The emptiness is not a flaw in the world. It is simply how the world is built, spaciously, lightly, with vast room between the few specks of substance. And something happens in that approach. Something invisible reaches across the gap and pushes back, long before any actual substance could ever meet. To understand touch, we have to understand that reaching across. We have to understand the force that does the work that solidity only pretends to do. Part 3. The force that does the pushing. If atoms are mostly empty space, then why does anything feel solid at all? Why doesn't your hand simply pass straight through the bed? Two clouds of mostly nothing drifting through each other like mist through mist. Something must be holding the world apart. Something must be doing the pushing that we mistake for contact. That something is a force. One of the deep, fundamental forces of the universe, the electromagnetic force. And it is the real reason you have never touched anything, and also the real reason you can feel anything at all. It is both the wall and the messenger. So let me tell you, gently, how it works. Remember that faint haze of electrons drifting at the outer edge of every atom, the mist at the cathedral walls? Those electrons carry something called negative electric charge. It is one of the basic properties of the universe, as fundamental as anything we know. And there is a simple, unbreakable rule about charge. Like charges repel. Two things carrying the same kind of charge push each other away. The closer they get, the harder they push. Not a little harder, dramatically, steeply harder, rising toward infinity as the gap shrinks toward nothing. Now think about what happens when your hand comes down on the bed. The outer edge of every atom in your skin is electrons. The outer edge of every atom in the surface of the bed is also electrons. As your hand descends, these two layers of electrons approach each other, negative charge nearing negative charge, and they refuse to meet. They push back against each other with a force that grows stronger and stronger the closer they come, until that force exactly balances the weight of your hand pressing down. Your hand stops, not because substance met substance, but because two fields of electric charge refused, absolutely and without exception, to occupy the same space.
That refusal is what you feel as solidity. That is the firmness of the bed, the resistance of the wall, the pressure of the floor. Every solid surface you have ever pressed against is really just a region where electrons said no, where the electromagnetic force pushed back hard enough to stop you. The wall is not stopping your hand. The wall's electrons are repelling your hand's electrons across a gap that, on the scale of atoms, is enormous. You are always, in the most literal sense, hovering, held a tiny, unbridgeable distance away from everything you ever appear to touch, floating on the push of a force you cannot see. There is something almost tender in this once it settles. The world is not holding you out at arm's length to be cruel. It is holding you the only way it can, through a force that, as we will see,
is the very same force that lets you feel anything at all. And consider how tireless this force is, how utterly faithful. Every single moment of your life, in every part of your body that touches anything, this silent negotiation is taking place. Countless electrons pushing back against countless other electrons, holding you exactly where you should be. Right now, as you lie there, the force is at work along the whole length of your body, holding you up off the deepest substance of the bed, distributing your weight, keeping you from sinking through. It does not rest. It does not weaken. It does not, even for the smallest fraction of an instant, decide to stop. From the moment of your birth to this very night, the electromagnetic force has held you against the world and the world against you, never once failing, never once letting the emptiness swallow you. We never thank it because we never feel it as a separate thing. We feel only its results, the firmness of the ground, the support of the chair, the reassuring resistance of everything we lean on. But underneath every one of those ordinary moments is this ceaseless, invisible, perfectly reliable refusal. Electrons declining, billions of times over, to let the world collapse into itself. The solidity of your entire life has rested on the patience of a force you have never seen. And the strangeness deepens when you realize how steep this pushing back is. The repulsion between electrons does not rise gently as they approach. It climbs with astonishing sharpness, growing weak when things are far apart, and then surging almost violently as the gap narrows toward nothing. This is why surfaces feel so definite, so crisp, so absolutely there. When your finger meets the table, there is no soft, gradual mushiness as one set of electrons slowly yields to another. There is open space, and then, very suddenly, over an almost impossibly thin band of distance, there is an immense wall of force, rising so steeply that your finger simply stops, as though it had struck something perfectly hard. The sharpness of that rise is what gives the world its clean edges, its definite surfaces, its reassuring this far and no further. The crisp boundary you feel on every solid thing is the steep cliff of a force climbing toward infinity in the space of almost nothing at all. The thing that keeps you from touching is the thing that lets you feel. They are one and the same. Part 4. Why touch is really a feeling of force. So, if you never actually make contact, if your electrons and the world's electrons never truly meet, then what is happening when you feel something? When you run your fingertips over silk or warm sand, or the cheek of someone you love, and it feels so vivid, so real, so unmistakably like touch. What is that sensation, if not contact? It is the feeling of force. And once you understand this, touch becomes something even more remarkable than you ever imagined. Your skin is laced with millions of tiny sensors, packed especially densely in your fingertips and your lips. These sensors are not waiting to detect contact, because contact never comes. What they are exquisitely tuned to detect is pressure. The push of the electromagnetic force as the electrons in your skin are repelled by the electrons in whatever you are near. When your fingertip approaches a surface, the electrons in the surface push back on the electrons in your skin. That push deforms the sensors in your fingertip ever so slightly, and they fire a signal. That signal races up your nerves, into your spinal cord, and up into your brain. And your brain, receiving it, builds the rich and immediate sensation you call touch. So everything you have ever felt, the texture of fabric, the warmth of a hand, the cool smoothness of water, the press of someone holding you, every bit of it was your nervous system reading the language of the electromagnetic force. You were never feeling the thing itself. You were feeling the force it exerted across the gap. Touch is not contact. Touch is the most intimate possible reading of a force that holds two things apart. And here is what moves me about it. The sensation is no less real for this. When someone holds your hand, the warmth and the comfort and the meaning of it are completely, profoundly real. What is not real is only the idea that skin met skin. Instead, the electrons in their hand reached out across a tiny gap and pushed against the electrons in yours, and your nerves translated that push into one of the most important feelings a human being can have. The connection was never broken by the gap. The connection was carried by it. The force that kept you from touching was the very thing that let you feel them at all. We tend to think the gap is a kind of failure, a sad little distance that keeps us forever just short of true contact. But the gap is not a failure. The gap is where feeling happens. If there were no gap, if your atoms could simply merge with the world's atoms, there would be no push, no signal, no sensation, and no you left intact to feel anything. And think for a moment about the sheer marvel of the machinery that reads this force, because it is happening in you right now, even as you rest. Your fingertips alone carry thousands upon thousands of tiny sensors, each one poised to detect the faintest push. They can feel a single hair drawn across the skin. They can sense a texture finer than the eye can see, a ridge smaller than a fraction of a millimeter. Run your fingers across a surface that seems perfectly smooth, and your sensors will still read the microscopic landscape of it. Every tiny bump and valley registered as the electrons of the surface push, with varying strength, against the electrons of your skin. And all of that delicate information races up your nerves faster than thought, and is assembled somewhere behind your eyes into the seamless, immediate, living sensation you simply call feeling. So the next time something brushes your skin, remember the strangeness and the wonder of what is truly happening. Nothing is touching you. Instead, a field of force is being read by one of the most sensitive instruments in the known universe, your own body, and translated into experience. You are not a thing being touched. You are a reader of forces, exquisitely tuned, drinking in the push and the pressure of a world you never actually meet, and weaving it into the rich texture of being alive. The separation is the price of the feeling, and it is a price worth paying. Part 5. The day we discovered the emptiness. It is worth pausing in the quiet to remember that we did not always know any of this. For nearly all of human history, no one suspected that solid matter was mostly empty. It looked solid, it felt solid, and so everyone assumed it was solid. The emptiness was one of the best hidden secrets in nature, and the story of how we found it is one of the most beautiful surprises in all of science. For a long time, even after we had begun to suspect that matter was made of atoms, people imagined the atom itself as a solid little sphere, or perhaps as a kind of soft ball with its substance spread evenly throughout, the way fruit is spread through a pudding. There was no reason to think otherwise. Nothing in ordinary life ever hinted that an atom might be almost entirely hollow. Then, a little over a century ago, an experiment was performed that changed everything, though no one expected it to. The idea was to probe the inside of the atom by firing tiny, fast-moving particles at an extremely thin sheet of gold foil, thin enough to be only a few atoms thick. The expectation was simple. If atoms were soft, evenly filled little spheres, then the tiny particles should pass almost straight through, perhaps deflected by the faintest amount, like pebbles sailing through a thin mist. And most of them did pass straight through, as expected. But every so often, rarely but unmistakably, one of the particles would come flying back, bouncing off the foil as though it had struck something incredibly small, incredibly dense, and incredibly hard, hidden somewhere inside the atom. It was, one of the scientists later said, as astonishing as if you had fired a shell at a sheet of tissue paper and watched it bounce back and hit you.
There was only one way to explain it. The atom was not a soft, evenly filled sphere at all. Almost all of its mass had to be concentrated in a tiny, dense core at the very center, the nucleus, with the rest of the atom being almost entirely empty space. Most of the particles sailed straight through the emptiness and out the other side, but the rare few that happened to head straight for one of those tiny, dense centers were flung violently back. The emptiness of the atom had revealed itself, not by being seen, but by how rarely anything in it could be hit. I find something wonderful in that. The vast emptiness inside all matter announced itself through a handful of particles bouncing backward in a darkened laboratory. We could not see the void directly, we never can, but we could prove it was there by how much nothing the particles passed through and how seldom they struck anything at all. There is a deep humility in this story, and a deep beauty that I want to draw out into the open. For thousands of years, the cleverest people who ever lived looked at the solid world and concluded, reasonably, that it was solid. They were not foolish. The evidence of the senses pointed exactly that way, as it still does for all of us every day. And then, a small number of patient people devised a way to ask the matter itself. Not their assumptions, not their intuitions, but the matter. And the matter answered. And the answer overturned what everyone had always believed. The world was not as it seemed. It never had been. It had been quietly, patiently waiting to be asked the right question. I think there is a gentleness in remembering this as you drift toward sleep. So much of what we take to be obvious, certain, beyond question, may simply be the limit of how closely we have yet looked. The solid floor was a mystery hiding in plain sight for the whole of human history, and the mystery was more beautiful than the certainty it replaced. The world is more strange and more wonderful and more full of hidden depth than it ever lets on to the casual glance. And every so often, if we are patient and humble and willing to be surprised, it lets us see a little further into what it truly is. The solid world confessed its emptiness, quietly, to anyone patient enough to ask the right question. And once we knew, the universe was never quite the same again. Part 6. The empty space in everything you love. Let us sit for a while with what this emptiness really means, because it touches everything, quite literally everything you have ever known or held or been. The chair you sat in today, mostly empty space. The water you drank, mostly empty space. The food that became your body, the air filling your lungs right now, the ground that has held up every step you have ever taken. All of it, overwhelmingly,
emptiness with the faintest tracery of substance suspended within it. The mountains, which feel like the very definition of solid permanence, are almost entirely hollow at the deepest level. The oceans, the clouds, the deserts, the great stone monuments that have stood for thousands of years, all of them, on the inside, are far more nothing than something. And so are you. Your hands, which feel so solid as you fold them tonight, are mostly empty space. Your beating heart, your breathing chest, your thinking brain, all built from atoms that are themselves almost entirely void. If you could see yourself at the scale of atoms, you would not see a solid person at all. You would see a vast, shimmering, mostly empty constellation. Uncountable tiny dense points, each impossibly far from its neighbors, held together in the rough shape of a human being by invisible forces reaching across the dark. You are far more like a galaxy than like a stone. Mostly space, with a scattering of substance, arranged into something that can wonder at itself. This could sound lonely, even frightening. To learn that the solid ground is not solid, that the people we hold are mostly emptiness, that we ourselves are more void than matter, it could feel like the floor dropping away, like the loss of something we counted on. And I understand that. There is a kind of vertigo in it at first, but sit with it a little longer, gently, and the feeling can turn. Because the emptiness has never once failed you. The mostly empty floor has held every step of your life. The mostly empty bed is holding you safely right now. The mostly empty hands of the people who love you have still, somehow, carried everything that hands can carry: comfort and warmth and care and presence. The emptiness inside all things has never made the world less real, less reliable, or less worthy of love. It simply means that solidity was always a kind of grace, something the universe gives us through force and arrangement, rather than through sheer packed substance. The world is held together not by being full, but by relationship, by forces reaching faithfully across the void, again and again, without ever once letting go. And those forces, it turns out, are not only what hold a single object together, they are what reach between you and everything else. They are the bridges across the gaps. If you have drifted partway toward sleep already, that is perfectly all right. There is nothing here you need to hold on to, nothing you must stay awake to catch. But if some quiet part of you would like another of these journeys to find you on another night, a single tap to subscribe is all it takes. It is the simplest way to let the next one come to you. Let me linger a moment longer on this idea that you are mostly empty, because I think it can land softly rather than heavily once you let it turn. We are taught, somewhere deep down, to equate substance with worth, to feel that to be real, to be valuable, to be solid, a thing must be full, packed, dense with stuff. And so the discovery that we are mostly nothing can feel, at first, like a kind of diminishment, as though we have been told we are less than we thought. But the opposite is true. A thing made mostly of substance can do very little. It can only sit there, heavy and inert. It is precisely the emptiness, the vast room inside and between the atoms, that allows for movement, for change, for chemistry, for life, for the endless dance of forces that makes a universe interesting enough to contain someone who can marvel at it. You are not diminished by your emptiness. You are made possible by it. The spaciousness inside you is not a void where something should be. It is the very openness that lets you be alive.
The most familiar of those bridges is the one we are about to follow. The strange, beautiful fact that the same force that keeps you from touching is the force that carries warmth and light, and even the voice of someone speaking to you in the dark. Part 7. The Bridge of Light Between All Things. We have said that the electromagnetic force is what pushes back when you press on the world, the reason for solidity, the reason for touch. But this same force does something even more wonderful. It is the great bridge builder of the universe, the thing that reaches across the empty gaps between all things and carries connection from one to another. And the form it most often takes, as it crosses those gaps, is light. Light is the messenger of the electromagnetic force. And when I say light, I do not only mean the light you can see. I mean the whole vast family of it. The warmth radiating from a fire, the heat of sunlight on your face, the glow of the screen, the invisible waves that carry voices and music through the air to you, and the visible colors your eyes can drink in. All of these are the same thing. Ripples in the electromagnetic field, traveling across space, carrying energy and information from one place to another. Light is how the universe sends messages across the emptiness that separates everything from everything else. Think about what this means for the simple act of seeing. Right now, if your eyes are open, light is traveling across the room and into them, bouncing off every surface, carrying the shape and color of the world to the sensors in the back of your eyes. You do not touch the things you see. Of course you don't. They may be across the room or across the sky. Instead, the electromagnetic force reaches out across all that empty space in the form of light and delivers the world to you. Seeing is touching at a distance by means of light. The sight of a loved one's face, the colors of a sunset, the stars overhead, all of it reaches you not by contact, but by this same patient force, carrying the world gently across the gap and laying it down inside your eyes.
And it goes further still. The warmth you feel from another person sitting near you, even before you touch. That is infrared light, the glow of their body's heat, crossing the space between you and landing softly on your skin. The sound of a voice is a little different. It travels as a wave through the air. But even that depends, at the deepest level, on electromagnetic forces holding the air's molecules together so they can carry the wave to your ear. Almost every way you have ever connected with anything outside yourself, sight, warmth, touch, the sound of a voice, has been the electromagnetic force, reaching across a gap, refusing to let the emptiness be the end of the story. So the universe is not a collection of isolated, solid things sitting in empty space, cut off from one another. It is the opposite. It is a vast web of emptiness, threaded everywhere with invisible bridges. Forces and light reaching constantly across every gap, carrying warmth and color and contact and connection from each thing to all the others. Think of how this transforms even the quiet darkness of your room tonight. It may seem empty, still, inert, just air and shadow and the dim shapes of familiar things. But it is, in truth, alive with crossing. Invisible light streams through it in every direction, the warmth radiating from your own body out into the room, the faint heat of every surface glowing softly in colors your eyes cannot see, signals and waves passing through the walls and through the air and through you, the whole space humming with the constant traffic of the electromagnetic force carrying energy from everywhere to everywhere. If you could see it all, the dark and silent room would blaze like a city at night, threaded with countless lines of light, every object in quiet conversation with every other. Nothing truly still, nothing truly alone. And you are part of that conversation, always, whether you notice it or not. You are receiving the warmth of the things around you and sending out your own. You are bathed in light, even in the dark. You are woven into the great crossing web of the electromagnetic force, a participant in it, never sealed off, never truly isolated, always reaching and being reached. There is a particular wonder in thinking about sight this way, since it is the sense we trust most and question least. When you look at the face of someone you love, it feels as though you are simply, directly seeing them, as though their presence comes to you whole and immediate, with nothing in between. But what truly happens is a long and delicate journey. Light leaves its source, races across the space between you, touches them, scatters off the particular landscape of their face, and a tiny portion of it travels onward across the last gap into your waiting eyes, where it is caught and read and assembled into the image you experience. You never reach across and touch their face. The light does it for you, gently, carrying the shape and color of them across the emptiness and laying it down inside you. Every face you have ever loved to look at, you have received as a gift of light crossing a gap. The same patient force that holds the gap open in the first place, now using that very gap as the road along which it brings you the sight of what you love. The emptiness does not separate us. It is the medium through which we are joined. Part 8. You are mostly the space between. We have looked outward at the emptiness in the world and the bridges of light between all things. Now let us turn inward to the emptiness in you, because it holds one of the gentlest truths of the night. You are, as we have said, mostly empty space. But I want you to feel what that really means, not as a frightening fact, but as an intimate one. The atoms that make up your body are not packed tight like bricks in a wall. They are held at careful distances from one another, each one kept apart from its neighbors by the very forces we have been describing. You are not a solid block of substance. You are a pattern, a particular arrangement of mostly empty atoms, held in a delicate, flowing shape by invisible forces, for a little while. And the atoms themselves are not even permanently yours. This is one of the most astonishing things about being alive. The substance of your body is constantly being exchanged with the world. With every breath, you take in atoms that were recently part of the air, the sky, other living things, and you release atoms that were, a moment ago, part of you. The food you eat becomes your flesh. Parts of your flesh are shed and returned to the world. Over time, not even very long, almost every atom in your body is replaced. The you of years ago is built from almost entirely different material than the you of tonight. And yet, you remained yourself the whole time, because you were never the atoms. You were the pattern, the shape, the arrangement that persisted, even as the substance flowed through it like water through a riverbed. Think of a wave moving across the ocean. The wave travels for miles, holds its shape, rises and curls, and is unmistakably a single wave. And yet, it is never made of the same water for more than an instant. The water rises and falls in place. It is the form, the pattern, that moves and endures. You are like that wave, a pattern in the great flowing substance of the world, holding your shape for a time, made of borrowed material that is always being returned and replaced, never truly solid, never truly fixed, and yet, unmistakably, continuously, you. There is something freeing in this, I think, as you lie there in the dark. You are not a lump of solid stuff, sealed off and alone. You are an open pattern, woven into the world, constantly exchanging substance with everything around you, mostly made of the same emptiness that fills the stars. Let me stay with the image of the wave a little longer, because I think it holds a real comfort. When you watch a wave travel across the surface of the sea, you are watching something that is unmistakably real, unmistakably one thing, moving with purpose and grace across the water, and yet it is not an object at all. It is a pattern passing through. The water it is made of this instant is not the water it was made of a moment ago. The wave is pure form, pure motion, a shape that persists while its substance endlessly changes. And nobody mourns this about a wave. Nobody says the wave is less beautiful, less real, less worth watching, because it is not made of fixed and permanent water. The impermanence of its substance is simply part of what a wave is, and you are exactly the same. The atoms that compose you tonight are mostly not the atoms that composed you years ago, and they will mostly be gone, replaced years from now. And through all of it, you remain. The pattern persists. The shape that is you flows on, even as the substance pours through it and away. You are not the matter. You never were. You are the form the matter takes for a while. The melody played on borrowed instruments. The wave traveling across the great sea of the world's substance. And that is not a frailty. That is a kind of freedom. To be a pattern rather than a prisoner of any particular handful of atoms. To flow and persist and remain yourself through endless change. You are not separate from the universe. You are a place where the universe has gathered itself, briefly, into the shape of someone who can feel and wonder and love. Part 9. The intimacy of never touching. Now we come to the tender heart of all this, because so far it might still sound a little sad that we never truly touch, that a gap always remains, that even in our closest moments we are held a hair's breadth apart by forces we cannot overcome. Let us turn that around now, gently, and see it for what it really is. When you hold someone's hand, the electrons in your skin and the electrons in theirs refuse to meet. A tiny gap remains between you, always. A gap that, on the scale of atoms, is real and uncrossable. In the strictest physical sense, you have never touched another human being. Not your closest friend, not your child, not anyone you have ever held in your arms. There has always been that final, infinitesimal distance. And yet, consider what actually happens in that gap. The electrons in their hand reach out across the emptiness and push gently against the electrons in yours. Your nerves read that push and tell you, someone is here. Someone is holding me. The warmth of their body crosses the space between you as soft infrared light and settles on your skin. Their presence reaches you through every form the electromagnetic force can take. Pressure, warmth, the sight of their face, the sound of their voice. Across a gap that can never close, every signal of love and presence still finds its way to you, faithfully, completely. The gap does not prevent the closeness. It carries it. There's a kind of poetry in this that I find almost unbearably beautiful. We spend so much of our lives longing for true closeness, for real contact, for some final merging with the people and the world we love. And we feel, sometimes, that we never quite reach it, that some last distance always remains. And the physics says, yes, that is true. A gap always remains. You will never fully merge with another. But it also says, that gap is not a wall, it is a bridge. Every tender thing that has ever passed between two people, every comfort, every reassurance, every wordless message of, I am here, you are not alone, crossed exactly that gap, carried by exactly the force that keeps it open. We were never meant to merge, we were meant to reach, and the reaching across the small eternal distance is what we call love. Maybe that is what touch truly is. Not the impossible merging of two solid things, but the faithful reaching of one pattern of emptiness toward another, across a gap that honors them both, letting each remain itself, whole and distinct, while still carrying everything that matters from one to the other. I think of all the moments in a life that we call touch, and what they really are beneath the surface. A mother holding a newborn for the first time, two clouds of stardust, electrons reaching across an uncrossable gap, and yet everything passing between them, warmth, safety, the whole overwhelming fact of love. Two people holding hands as they grow old together. Never once in all those years their atoms meeting, and yet every squeeze of the hand, every bit of comfort and presence and devotion, faithfully carried across the tiny space that always remained. The last time you held someone you loved before they were gone. Still the gap, still the reaching, still everything that mattered crossing over. None of it was diminished by the gap. All of it happened in the gap, through the gap, because of the gap. We imagine sometimes that there is a truer, more complete closeness we are being denied, that if only we could somehow fully merge, fully dissolve into another, we would finally have the connection we long for. But I am not sure that is true, even as a wish. Because if you merged completely with another, there would no longer be two of you to share the closeness. There would be no one left to feel held, and no one left to do the holding. The gap is what keeps you both real. The gap is what makes love possible. Love being, after all, something that happens between two who remain themselves. The small, eternal distance is not the enemy of closeness. It is the home of it. The gap is what lets you be you and them be them, and still lets you feel each other completely. To never truly touch, it turns out, is not to be forever apart. It is to be joined in the only way that lets both of you remain. Part 10. What holds the nucleus together? We have spent the night in the emptiness of the atom and the gentle pushing of the electromagnetic force. But there is another force at work down there, deeper still, and it is worth visiting in the quiet, because it holds the very center of everything together, and without it, there would be no atoms, no you, no world to touch at all. Remember the nucleus, the tiny, dense marble at the center of the cathedral, where almost all the substance lives. The nucleus is itself made of even smaller particles, packed tightly together. And here is a puzzle. Many of those particles carry positive electric charge, and we already know the rule about charge. Like charges repel. So those positively charged particles, crammed together in the tiniest space imaginable, should be pushing each other apart with tremendous force. The nucleus should fly violently to pieces. By the logic of the electromagnetic force alone, it could not exist at all. And yet it does. Something holds it together, something stronger at that tiny scale than the electric repulsion trying to blow it apart. We call it, simply, the strong force. It is the most powerful force in nature, but it has a strange and beautiful character. It only reaches across the very tiniest of distances. Out here, in the world of hands and beds and mountains, you never feel it at all. It is utterly invisible to ordinary life. But down in the heart of the atom, across distances smaller than the nucleus itself, it grips the particles together with a strength that overwhelms their mutual repulsion and binds them into a stable core. It is the glue at the center of all matter, working silently at a scale we can never see, holding together the very substance that everything is built from.
I find a quiet wonder in the layered nature of all this. The world is held together by forces operating at every scale, each doing its own work. The strong force binds the heart of each atom. The electromagnetic force holds the atoms at their careful distances, builds the solidity of things, and reaches across the gaps as light and warmth and touch. And on the largest scales of all, gravity gently shapes the worlds and the stars. Layer upon layer of invisible relationship, from the center of the atom to the span of the galaxies, all of it working together, all of it holding the world in being from one moment to the next. Nothing is solid, everything is held. And it has been held, faithfully, every second of your life, by forces you have never seen and rarely thought about, working tirelessly, asking nothing, keeping the world together so that you could live inside it. So even the substance at the very center of things, the dense marble in the cathedral, is not solid in the old sense. It is a balance of forces, a truce between repulsion and binding, a relationship rather than a simple lump of stuff. And I find it quietly moving that this binding force, the strongest in all of nature, is also the most modest in its reach. It does not stretch out across the room or across the world the way gravity and light do. It works only at the very smallest of scales, deep in the heart of each atom, holding together the core and asking for nothing beyond that. It is like a quiet devotion that works entirely out of sight, never seen, never felt directly, never acknowledged, and yet without it, nothing could exist at all. Every atom in your body is held at its center by this silent, powerful, invisible faithfulness, working at a scale you can never perceive, having worked there without pause since long before you were born, since the very atoms were made. There is a whole hidden order beneath the calm surface of the world, layer within layer of it, each holding the next in being. The strong force holds the heart of the atom. The electromagnetic force holds the atoms together into matter and reaches between things as light and warmth and touch. Gravity holds the worlds in their courses and gathers the stars into galaxies. None of these can you see. All of them are working, right now, everywhere, tirelessly, to keep the world in existence, to keep you in existence, from the center of every atom to the edge of the observable universe. You rest tonight inside an immense and invisible architecture of holding, sustained at every level by forces that never rest. All the way down, at every level, the world turns out to be made not of solid matter, but of relationship, of forces reaching, holding, balancing, connecting. Part 11. The hum at the bottom of everything. Let us go all the way down now, as far as we can go, to the very bottom of matter, past the atom, past the nucleus, past even the tiny particles inside it, and see what we find at the deepest level we know. Because what waits there is the strangest and most beautiful idea of all, and it gently dissolves the last trace of the solid world we thought we knew. We have been speaking of particles, electrons, the bits of the nucleus, as though they were tiny objects, little specks of stuff, marbles too small to see. And for getting a feeling of the emptiness, that picture serves well enough. But at the deepest level our physics can reach, the particles are not little objects at all. They are something far stranger. They are more like ripples, small, persistent disturbances in invisible fields that fill all of space. Try to feel the idea, even if it slips through the fingers of the mind, because that slipperiness is part of the truth. Imagine that all of space, everywhere, even the deepest emptiness, is filled with invisible fields, like the still surface of an unimaginably vast and quiet ocean, present everywhere, in every corner of the universe. And what we call a particle, an electron, say, is not a thing sitting in that ocean. It is a ripple in it, a small, stable, self-sustaining disturbance in the field, a little knot of vibration that holds its shape and moves through space. Every electron in your body is a ripple in the same single field that stretches across the entire universe. Every particle of light is a ripple in another. The substance of the world, all the way down, is not stuff at all. It is vibration. It is the trembling of fields. It is something far more like music than like matter. And so, the most solid-seeming thing you can imagine, the densest stone, the heaviest metal, the bones of your own body, is, at the deepest level we know, a pattern of vibrations in invisible fields that fill all of space. A standing chord held steady for a while. The universe, at its foundation, does not seem to be made of tiny solid things. It seems to be made of something closer to a hum, a vast, continuous, vibrating presence out of which all the particles, all the atoms, all the apparent solidity of the world arises like notes rising out of silence. I cannot pretend this is easy to picture, and no one fully holds it in their mind, not the physicists who work with it every day. But you do not need to picture it perfectly to feel the wonder of it. The bottom of reality is not a floor of solid bricks. It is a field of trembling, a quiet music playing everywhere at once, and you are one of its melodies. Let the musical image carry you, since the night is for resting and not for straining. Think of how a single note from a violin is not a thing, but an event, a vibration, a trembling of a string that sets the air itself trembling, a pattern of motion that exists only as long as the vibration continues, and then fades back into silence. The note has no substance you could hold in your hand. It is pure pattern, pure vibration, and yet it is unmistakably real, real enough to move you to tears. Now imagine that everything, every particle, every atom, every speck of substance in you and in the stars is a note like that. A vibration in an invisible field, held steady, sounding continuously, a standing tone in the great instrument of the universe. The matter of the world is not stuff. It is sustained music, played on fields that fill all of space and never falling silent. And if that is so, then you are not a solid object that happens to exist. You are a song the universe is singing,
in a particular shape for a particular while. The same fields that vibrate as the distant galaxies vibrate right now as the atoms of your resting body. The deep music does not play somewhere far away in some abstract realm of physics. It plays here as you tonight. You are not listening to the music of the universe from outside it. You are a passage of that music, sounding briefly in the dark, woven of the same vibration as everything that is. The same fields that hum in the farthest galaxy hum in the atoms of your folded hands. You are not separate from that deep music. You are a verse of it, sung briefly into a particular shape, here, tonight. Part 12. Why the world feels solid anyway. After all of this, the emptiness, the forces, the ripples in invisible fields, you might wonder why, then, the world feels so utterly solid. If everything is mostly void and vibration, why does the bed hold you so firmly? Why does a wall feel like a wall and not like mist? Why has the illusion of solidity fooled every human being who ever lived, right up until a century ago? There is a gentle and satisfying answer, and it is worth resting in. The solidity is not a lie. It is a true and reliable feature of the world. It is just produced in a different way than we always assumed. We imagine solidity came from packed substance, from stuff pressed against stuff. In fact, it comes from force, from the relentless, steep, unyielding refusal of electrons to share the same space. And that refusal is, for all practical purposes, absolute. When you press your hand on the bed, the electromagnetic force pushing back grows so strong, so fast, as the gap narrows, that your hand stops as surely as if it had hit something perfectly solid. The solidity you feel is the felt strength of that refusal, and it is utterly dependable. The force does not get tired. It does not take a night off. It pushes back every single time with exactly the strength needed to hold the world in its shape. So the solidity is real in every way that matters to a living being. The floor will always hold you. The wall will always stop you. The cup will always hold the water, and the bridge will always bear your weight, and the hand you reach for will always meet your hand with gentle resistance. None of that changes when you learn what lies beneath it. The emptiness does not make the world fragile or unreliable. The forces are faithful. The patterns are stable. The music holds its tune. You can trust the solid world completely, even knowing now that its solidity is a kind of magnificent performance staged by invisible forces across uncountable tiny gaps. And maybe that is the gentlest lesson of the whole night. That something can be, at its foundation, almost entirely empty and still be completely trustworthy. That the truth beneath a thing can be utterly different from how it appears, and yet the appearance can still be real, still be reliable, still be worthy of our trust and our love. There is a reassurance in this that runs deeper than physics, I think. We sometimes fear that if we look too closely at the things we depend on, if we learn what they are really made of, how they really work, what lies beneath the comforting surface, we will find that they are hollow, and the comfort will be spoiled. We are afraid the truth will take something from us. But here is a case where looking all the way down to the very bottom of the most solid thing there is reveals an emptiness so complete it defies belief. And the floor still holds. The bed still cradles you. The truth took nothing away. The solidity was never a lie that the emptiness exposes. It was always a deeper kind of truth, produced by forces rather than by stuff.
and it remains exactly as dependable as it ever was. So you can let yourself trust the world tonight, fully, even knowing everything we have said. Knowing the emptiness does not require you to feel the ground grow uncertain beneath you. The ground was always mostly empty, every single day of your life, and it held you every single day all the same. Nothing has changed about how safe you are. The only thing that has changed is how much quiet wonder you can feel about the safety, that it was built all along out of almost nothing, held faithful by invisible forces, and that it never once let you fall. The bed is mostly nothing, and it will still hold you safely until morning. Your body is mostly nothing, and it will still carry you faithfully through your life. The people you love are mostly nothing, and their arms will still hold you. Their warmth will still reach you. Their presence will still be one of the realest things you will ever know. I think this is worth holding especially gently, because it speaks to something beyond physics, to the way we meet all the hidden depths of our lives. We are often afraid that understanding a thing will diminish it, that if we learn how love works in the brain, it will feel less like love, that if we learn how a rainbow forms, it will feel less like wonder, that if we learn what the solid world is truly made of, it will feel less solid, less safe, less ours. But tonight offers the opposite lesson, written into the very floor of reality. Here is the most basic fact about the physical world, that it is solid, that it holds us, and we have looked all the way down to its foundation, past the atoms, past the forces, into the trembling emptiness at the bottom, and the solidity did not vanish. It deepened. It became more wondrous, not less. The understanding did not steal the comfort. It gave the comfort a depth it never had before. So you can let understanding and wonder live together tonight, without fear that one will spoil the other. You can know exactly how empty and strange the world truly is, and still trust it completely, still rest in it fully, still love it without reservation. The knowing and the trusting are not enemies. They never were. To understand the world deeply is not to lose your home in it. It is to find that your home was always far more astonishing than you knew, and to be held by it anyway, exactly as you always have been. Part 13. The space we share. There is a thought I want to offer you now, in the deep quiet of the night, that follows from everything we have said. And it is, I think, one of the most consoling ideas in all of physics. Because all things are mostly empty space, and because the forces and fields that make us reach across that space without end, the hard boundaries we imagine between ourselves and the world are far softer than they seem. Where exactly do you end? At your skin? But your skin is mostly empty space, its atoms held in a loose lattice, constantly exchanging substance with the air around you. The air you are breathing was, moments ago, outside you, and will soon be part of your blood, and later will be breathed back out into the room and drawn into the lungs of someone else, perhaps, or carried out a window into the wide world. The boundary between you and everything else is not a sealed wall. It is a busy, open, endlessly crossing threshold. The atoms in your body have been elsewhere before. The carbon in you was once in the air, in plants, in ancient creatures, in stars.
The water in you has fallen as rain, run in rivers, floated as cloud, and will do all of those things again, long after you are gone. You are not a closed and isolated object. You are a gathering place, a spot where atoms pause for a while in the shape of you, before moving on to be part of everything else. And the same is true of every person you have ever loved, and every person you will never meet. We are all gathering places for the same wandering substance, the same borrowed atoms, the same fields humming through all of space. We are made of the same stuff, passing it endlessly between us, sharing the one great pool of matter and energy that fills the universe. So, in the deepest physical sense, we are not separate beings standing apart in empty space. We are eddies in a single great flow, distinct for a time, holding our shapes, but joined at the foundation, made of the same material, exchanging it constantly, woven into one continuous fabric of forces and fields, and slowly circulating substance. The emptiness that fills us is the same emptiness that fills the space between us and the space between the stars. There is no sharp line where you stop and the universe begins. You shade into it gently at every point of your mostly open edge. And that means the loneliness we sometimes feel, the sense of being a single, sealed self, cut off behind the wall of our own skin, is, at the level of physics, not quite true. The wall is not sealed. It was never sealed. You are in constant, intimate exchange with everything around you, sharing atoms with the air and the people and the world, reaching and being reached by invisible forces in every direction, made of the same deep music as everything else that exists. Consider just the air you are breathing tonight, since it is perhaps the clearest proof of how open you truly are. With each breath in, you draw a small piece of the world inside you, and some of it stays, woven into your blood and your body. With each breath out, you release a piece of yourself back into the room, into the world, to drift and mingle and be drawn into other lungs, other lives. The air that is inside you now was, moments ago, outside you, and will be outside you again soon, and was breathed before you by countless others, and will be breathed after you by countless more. You are not a closed vessel taking sips from a separate world. You are a place the world flows through, ceaselessly, a doorway it passes in and out of, in a slow and constant exchange that does not stop for as long as you live. And this is true not only of the air, but of everything. The water in you came from the rivers and the rain and will return to them. The substance of your body was borrowed from the world and will be given back to it. Even now, you are not so much a thing as a process, a flowing and exchanging, a continuous handing back and forth between you and the great body of the world. The boundary you imagine at your skin is the busiest, most open border there is, crossed in both directions every moment of your life. You were never sealed in. You were always flowing, always joined, always part of the one great circulation of substance that moves through all living things and all the world besides. And here is a thought to rest in, almost too large to hold. Because the world's substance circulates endlessly and has done so for all of time, the atoms that make you tonight have almost certainly been part of countless other living things before you. Ancient forests, creatures long gone, people who lived and loved and wondered thousands of years ago. The breath you just took contains atoms once breathed by people across all of history. The water in you has passed through countless other bodies, countless rivers and clouds and seas. You are not only connected to the world around you in space, you are connected through your very substance to all the life that came before you and to all the life that will come after. The atoms pause in you for a while, on a journey that began long before you and will continue long after. A journey that has already passed through more of the world and more of life than you could ever count. So you are never truly alone, not even in the deepest sense. You are made of the shared substance of the world and of all who came before, and you will pass it on to all who come after. You are a single living knot in an endless thread that runs through all of life and all of time, tied for a moment into the shape of you, and joined through every atom to everything that has ever lived and everything that ever will. You have never been as separate as you felt. You never could be. Part 14. The atoms that were stars.
Let us follow those wandering atoms back now, as far as they will take us. Because the story of where the substance of your body came from is, perhaps, the most astonishing part of all. And it casts everything we have said tonight in a deeper and warmer light. The atoms that make you up, the very nuclei at the centers of all those empty cathedrals, the dense marbles around which your electrons drift, did not begin here on Earth. They are far older than the Earth, far older than the Sun. Most of them were forged in the hearts of stars. The carbon in your cells, the oxygen you breathe, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, nearly all of it was created deep inside ancient stars, in the immense heat and pressure of their cores, where simple atoms were fused together into the richer elements that life requires. And when those ancient stars reached the ends of their lives and scattered their substance into space, that material drifted across the dark for ages and eventually gathered together to form new stars, new worlds, and, in time, here, living things. You. So the emptiness inside you is threaded with substance that was once inside stars. Every dense little nucleus in your body is a relic of some long-dead sun, a tiny ember carried across billions of years and unimaginable distances to become, for a while, part of you. The atoms in your hand were cooked in stellar furnaces before the Earth existed. The atoms in the hand of someone you love came from the same kind of source, perhaps, in part, from the very same ancient stars. When you reach for them across that tiny, uncrossable gap, you are two patterns of stardust, reaching toward each other through the emptiness, made of the scattered hearts of suns that died, so that there could one day be hands to hold. This is not poetry laid over the physics. It is the physics. The matter we are made of has a history, and that history runs back through the earth, through the cloud that formed the sun, into the interiors of stars that lived and died before our world began. The solidity you have learned to see through tonight is built from emptiness. But the small, precious substance suspended in that emptiness is starlight made solid, the inheritance of the whole long history of the cosmos, gathered briefly into the shape of a living, feeling person. So you are mostly empty space, and the little that is not empty is the dust of stars. You are a vast, mostly hollow constellation of ancient stellar substance, held in shape by invisible forces, exchanging atoms with the world, vibrating at the bottom with the music of universal fields, reaching across uncrossable gaps to feel a world you can never quite touch.
Sit with the journey those atoms have made, because it is almost beyond imagining, and it ended in you. Each dense little nucleus at the center of each empty atom in your body began in the heart of a star, formed in heat and pressure we could never survive, in a furnace burning at the center of a sun, perhaps many different suns. Those stars lived for ages and then died, casting their substance out into the dark in great clouds. And those clouds drifted across distances and spans of time so vast they erased the imagination, slowly gathering, slowly cooling, until some of that scattered stellar substance became part of a new cloud that formed our sun and our earth and the rivers and the rocks and the living things. And finally, after all of that, after billions of years and unthinkable distances, a small portion of that ancient star stuff gathered itself into the shape of you and woke up and looked around and wondered where it came from. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal history of the substance of your body. You are the latest resting place of atoms that have been traveling since the early universe, that have been part of stars and clouds and worlds and other living things, and that paused for the brief span of your life to be you. And when your pattern eventually releases them, they will go on into the air, the earth, the rain, new living things, perhaps one day into new stars and new worlds. You are a moment in the long life of star stuff, a shape it briefly takes, a place where the ancient dust of the cosmos has gathered itself into something that can love and be loved. That is not a lesser thing than the solid person you imagined yourself to be this morning. It is a far greater and stranger and more beautiful thing. Part 15. The rule that no two things can share. There is one more piece of the puzzle of solidity, and it is perhaps the deepest and strangest of all. A quiet rule woven into the very fabric of reality that, more than anything else, is why the world cannot simply collapse into itself, why matter takes up room at all, why you and the bed and the whole solid-seeming world keep their shapes instead of melting into a single, dense point. It is a rule about sharing and about its impossibility. We have spoken of electrons being repelled by other electrons through the electromagnetic force. But there is something even more fundamental at work, something that has nothing to do with charge or pushing in the ordinary sense. It is this: certain particles, and electrons are among them, simply cannot occupy the same state in the same place at the same time. It is not that they push each other away. It is that nature forbids them, at the most basic level, from being in the same condition together. Each one must have its own state, its own place in the order of things. No two can share. This principle, discovered in the strange early days of our exploration of the atom, turns out to be one of the great pillars holding up the solid world. Think of what this means. The electrons in an atom cannot all crowd into the lowest, closest position around the nucleus, even though the electromagnetic attraction would, on its own, draw them inward. They are forbidden from sharing the same state, and so they are forced to stack up, one after another, into larger and larger arrangements, filling level after level, spreading out, taking up room. This forced spreading out is, in the deepest sense, why atoms have size at all, why they are great cathedrals of space rather than tiny, collapsed points. The refusal to share is what gives matter its very dimensions. And it goes further. When you press two objects together, it is not only that their electrons repel one another electrically. It is also that the electrons of one object cannot slip into the occupied states of the other. Nature will not permit two of them to share the same condition in the same place. This deep prohibition adds an enormous resistance, a refusal more absolute than mere pushing, holding the two objects apart. Much of the firmness you feel when you press your hand to the table is this very rule at work. The universe's fundamental insistence that each electron keep its own place, that no two ever fully merge into one shared condition. I find something quietly profound in this, beyond even the physics. At the very root of the solid world is a principle of distinctness, a deep law that everything must keep its own identity, that no two things may dissolve into perfect sameness, that each must remain itself. The solidity of the world, its very ability to have shape and structure and substance, rests on this insistence on individuality, written into the foundations of nature. Without it, all matter would collapse together into an undifferentiated point. With it, the world can have form and variety and standing structures, and you. There is a strange tenderness in thinking about this as it touches our own lives. We sometimes wish, in our closest moments, that we could utterly dissolve into another person, lose the boundary between us entirely, become truly one. And the deepest rule of matter gently tells us why that can never quite be, and why it is good that it cannot. Each electron must keep its own state. Each particle must remain itself. The whole structured world exists only because nothing is permitted to fully merge with anything else. Your very body holds its shape, holds together, exists at all, because of this fundamental keeping of distinctness at the root of things. To be a structured being in this universe is to be, irreducibly, yourself, and to let everything else be irreducibly itself, too. So the same rule that gives the world its solidity also gives it its variety, its multiplicity, its endless particular things. This hand and not that one, this person and not another, this single, irreplaceable life. The universe did not make one vast, undifferentiated substance. It made distinct things, kept distinct by a law woven into its foundations. And out of that distinctness came everything. Every star its own star, every grain of sand its own grain, every person their own person. The refusal to merge is the source of all the world's beautiful particularity. Even the universe, it seems, builds everything it makes upon the principle that each part must remain its own. Part 16. The emptiness that is never quite empty.
We have spent the whole night calling the space inside and between things empty. And on the scale of atoms and the things they build, it truly is. Vast reaches of nothing, with only the faintest scattering of substance. But if you go down far enough, to the very finest grain of reality, you find one last surprise waiting in the dark, and it is the gentlest and most mysterious of them all. The emptiness at the very bottom is never quite empty. We saw earlier that what we call particles are really ripples in invisible fields that fill all of space. Those fields are everywhere. There is nowhere they are not. And a field, even where it holds no particle, even in the most perfect vacuum imaginable, is never perfectly still. It trembles, faintly, always. At the very finest scale, the emptiest space you could ever create, a space with every particle removed, every speck of matter taken away, colder and emptier than the deepest void between the galaxies, still hums with a faint,
restless, irreducible flickering. The fields cannot be made perfectly quiet. There is a gentle, ceaseless shimmer woven into the very fabric of empty space, a quiet trembling at the foundation of everything that can never be stilled. It is hard to overstate how strange and lovely this is. We tend to think of emptiness as the absence of everything, as pure, dead, silent nothing. But the physics tells us there is no such thing as that perfect nothing anywhere in the universe. Wherever you go, however much you remove, the fundamental fields remain, and they go on trembling, faint and tireless, in the dark. You cannot reach a place of true and final silence. The universe does not contain one. The very floor of reality is not a stillness, but a soft and endless motion, a quiet activity that underlies even the most absolute emptiness. So the void is not truly a void. The deepest emptiness is alive with a faint and constant murmuring, a low hum of the fields that fill all of space, present in every corner of the universe, present in the spaces inside your own atoms, present in the dark of your room tonight. Even where there is nothing, especially where there is nothing, the universe is quietly, restlessly humming to itself, never fully silent, never fully at rest. I find this the most beautiful idea of the whole night, and the most fitting to carry toward sleep, because it means that the emptiness we are made of, the vast space inside every atom of us, is not a dead and silent nothing. It is alive with the faint trembling of the fundamental fields, the same quiet hum that fills the farthest reaches of space. The emptiness within you and the emptiness between the stars are the same living emptiness, the same gentle murmuring of the deep fields, never quite still, never quite silent, singing softly to itself everywhere at once. You are not made of dead void. You are made of living emptiness, humming with the quietest music there is. And perhaps that is a comfort to hold as you drift off. The spaces inside you are not lonely, hollow gaps. They are full of the quiet activity of the fields, the same activity that fills all of space, the same gentle, ceaseless trembling that has been there since the beginning of the universe and will be there at its end. You are not a scattering of lonely specks in a dead and silent void. You are a pattern woven through a living, humming, restless emptiness that connects you, at the very deepest level, to every other place in all of existence. Part 17. What the emptiness gives us. So, what are we to make of all this as the night deepens and you drift toward sleep? We began with a strange and almost troubling claim that you have never touched anything, that the solid world is mostly empty, that even your own body is more void than substance. And we could have let that be a cold and lonely fact. But I hope by now it has turned into something else entirely. Because the emptiness, it turns out, is not a lack. It is a gift. The empty space inside the atom is what gives the world room to be held together by relationship rather than by brute-packed substance. And relationship, not substance, is what makes everything interesting, everything alive, everything capable of connection. The gap between you and the world is what lets you feel the world at all. Without it, there would be no push, no signal, no sensation. The fact that you never truly touch is what lets you and the ones you love remain yourselves, whole and distinct, even as everything that matters passes faithfully between you across the gap. The constant exchange of your atoms with the world is what makes you a living, breathing, open part of the universe, rather than a sealed and isolated stone.
The emptiness is not what keeps us apart. The emptiness is the very room in which all closeness happens.
And there is a deep humility in it, the good kind. The kind that makes you feel not small, but connected. To know that you are mostly empty space is to know that you are not so different at the foundation from the air and the stars and the people around you. We are all mostly emptiness. We are all held together by the same faithful forces. We are all made of the same borrowed, ancient, star-forged substance, passing it endlessly between us. The pride of being a separate, solid, self-contained thing dissolves gently, and in its place comes something better. The quiet knowledge that you belong to everything, that you are woven into it, that you have never once been truly alone inside the wall of your skin, because that wall was never really there. It is worth noticing, too, how every strange thing we have found tonight turned out to be a gift rather than a loss. The emptiness inside the atom seemed at first like a hollowing out of the solid world, and it turned out to be the very room that makes life and movement and chemistry possible. The gap that keeps us from touching seemed like a sad little distance, and it turned out to be the place where all feeling happens, the bridge across which love itself is carried. The constant loss and replacement of our atoms seemed like a kind of impermanence to mourn, and it turned out to be what makes us open, living, flowing parts of the world, rather than sealed and lonely stones. The deep rule that nothing may fully merge seemed like a barrier, and it turned out to be the source of all the world's beautiful distinctness, the reason you get to be uniquely, irreplaceably you. Again and again, what looked like a lack revealed itself as a gift in disguise. That, perhaps, is the truest lesson of the emptiness, that the things we first fear as absences are so often, on closer and gentler looking, the very sources of everything we love. So the next time you hold someone's hand, or press your bare feet into the grass, or feel the simple weight of a blanket on a cold night, remember what is really happening. Remember that you are not touching, but reaching, that across a tiny, faithful gap, the universe is carrying the world to you, through forces older than the earth, in substance older than the sun. And let this be, above all, a gentle thing to carry, not a heavy one. It would be possible to hear all of this and feel unmoored, to feel that the solid, reassuring world has been pulled out from under you, that everything you trusted has been revealed as hollow. But I hope you feel instead the opposite, because nothing real has been taken away. The hand you hold is exactly as warm. The grass is exactly as cool and alive beneath your feet. The blanket is exactly as comforting. Everything you have ever loved about being alive in a physical world remains, untouched, exactly as it was. All that has changed is that you now know how astonishing it all is, that the warmth and the comfort and the closeness are carried to you across tiny gaps by ancient forces, that you and everything you love are mostly spacious emptiness, threaded with starlight, that the whole solid-seeming world is a vast and faithful collaboration of invisible forces holding everything gently in being. That knowledge does not need to make you feel small or lost or alone. It can make you feel the opposite, connected, woven in, belonging utterly to a universe you are made of and joined to at every level. The emptiness is not a cold fact about how little is really there. It is a warm fact about how much room there is for everything to touch everything else, for light to travel, for forces to reach, for atoms to be shared, for a mostly empty person to feel the mostly empty hand of someone they love and know beyond any doubt that they are not alone. You have never touched anything, and you have never, for one single instant, been apart from any of it. Part 18. Reaching across the gap. We have come a long way tonight, down through the emptiness of all things and back out again, and the hour is late, and your hands are still folded, mostly empty space, holding nothing and held by nothing, and yet warm and yours and real. So let us gather everything together, slowly, and let it carry you down into sleep. You began the night believing you touch the world, and in the strictest sense, you never have. The solid surfaces are mostly void, the atoms never meet. A tiny, uncrossable gap remains between you and everything you have ever pressed against, everyone you have ever held. You are a mostly empty pattern of ancient stardust, held in shape by invisible forces, humming at the bottom with the music of universal fields, exchanging your very substance with the world, breath by breath, reaching always across a gap you can never close.
And none of that has made you the slightest bit less connected to the world. It has revealed instead how the connection truly works. The gap is not a wall between you and what you love. It is the bridge across which all feeling travels. The push of the electromagnetic force, refusing to let your atoms merge with the world's, is the very same push your nerves read as the warmth of a hand, the texture of the earth, the comfort of being held. The emptiness inside you is the same emptiness that gives the stars room to shine. The atoms that make you were forged in suns that died before the earth was born, and they will go on after you to be part of the air and the rain and other living things, the substance passing on through the great open exchange that joins all things to all things. You were never a sealed and solid island. You were always a gathering place, an eddy in the flow, a verse of the deep music, woven through and through with everything that is. So when you reach for the world, when you reach for another person across that small, eternal gap, know that the reaching is the whole of it, and that the reaching is enough. We were never meant to merge into one solid thing. We were meant to stay ourselves, distinct and whole, and to send everything that matters across the gap between us: warmth, presence, comfort, love. That is what touch has always truly been. Not contact, reaching. And the reaching has never once failed to cross. You have never touched anything in your life, and you have never been alone. Both are true, tonight and always, woven together so completely that they are, in the end, the same gentle truth. You are made of mostly nothing and held by everything, and joined to all of it across the faithful, beautiful, uncrossable gap. Let that be the last thing you carry down into sleep, not the strangeness of it, but the warmth, that you are not a lonely, solid thing, sealed off in a hostile world of other solid things, that you are a pattern of ancient stardust and living emptiness, woven through and through with the world, reaching and being reached in every moment, joined by light and warmth and force and shared substance to everything that is. That the gap between you and all you love is not a wall, but a bridge, and that across it, faithfully, ceaselessly,
The whole universe is reaching back toward you. You were never apart. You were always held. And you will be held still, exactly as you are, all through the night and into the morning. You don't have to do anything with that knowledge tonight. You don't have to stay awake for it. The forces will keep holding the world together, whether you are watching or sleeping. The bed will hold you. The atoms will hum. The stardust will keep its shape until morning. And the gap, the small and faithful gap that joins you to everything, will still be there when you wake, carrying the world gently to you, as it always has. Sleep well. You are held. You have always been held. And nothing, not even the emptiness at the heart of all things, has ever truly kept you apart from the world you love. Good night.